The only thing hotter than the surface of the sun may be Billy Napier's seat over at Florida. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. On today's show, we got some injury updates going on around the conference as we get ready for week 2 and much more. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to Everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by Ultimate College Football Head Coach. It is a brand new mobile game that is completely free, no ads, 100% playable offline. Use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to get a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. All right, let's dive into it. We got plenty to discuss going on around the conference as we start to turn the page from SEC Week 1 and get ready for SEC Week 2. And we start over at Texas A&M as Mike Elko announced some unfortunate injury news for the Aggies at his weekly press conference on Monday. Starting center Mark Nabu will miss the remainder of the 2024 season with an injury he suffered in the loss to Notre Dame. He's a redshirt sophomore, was a big part of A&M's offensive line a year ago, made 12 starts last year, 11 of them at left guard. He beat out Fayou for the starting center job during fall camp. And like Elko pointed out, it was a tough competition, and he earned that role. And unfortunately, he is going to miss the rest of the season. Now, Elko did confirm that Fayou was healthy going into the week after he departed the Notre Dame game with an injury of his own on Saturday night. So we'll have to see who will start for A&M at center this week. They will play McNeese State before they start SEC play against Florida the following week. How about over at Tennessee? Defensive lineman Emmanuel Okoye going to miss the remainder of this season with a knee injury, according to reports. Austin Price over at VolQuest broke that news. And Okoye, who is yet to play in a game for the Vols in his career, suffered a torn ACL toward the end of fall camp. Was expected to be a reserve defensive lineman for Tennessee this year, but was not necessarily going to play a significant role. Moved positions from tight end to defensive line and came into Knoxville as a 4-star prospect from the NFL Academy in London. So tough news there. By the way, Josh Heupel and the Vols are going to get ready to face NC State in Charlotte coming up this weekend. How about over at Alabama? Kalen DeBoer getting off to a good start over at Alabama, beating Western Kentucky 63-0. But one guy that was missing from the offense was sophomore offensive tackle Caden Proctor. He missed the game after sustaining a shoulder injury during warmups. Good news is it doesn't sound like it's going to be a long-term issue. Kalen DeBoer saying on Monday that it is a shoulder situation. He said it's one that we will be able to manage, so that's a positive. It'll be something that as we go through the week, we will continue to evaluate. Alabama getting ready to host South Florida this coming Saturday. And if you've missed it on social media, it's been pretty funny. A lot of South Florida fans on Twitter kind of talking trash to Alabama fans about this game and saying, hey, you remember that game last year? We forced your coach to retire. We gave you so many fits down there at USF last year. And, you know, they were saying maybe some rain in the forecast for Saturday, and that'll bring back some bad memories for Alabama fans last year where it was an ugly win. One of the ugliest wins of Nick Saban's tenure there at Alabama, winning ugly at South Florida. But nonetheless, going to be a fun little game going on this weekend in Tuscaloosa. South Florida heads to town. And one guy that's looking to build off his first week 1 debut. How about Ryan Williams, the big stud wide receiver, big-time recruit that came in as a true freshman? Nick Sheridan praising the true freshman, talking to reporters on Monday. If you remember Ryan Williams, he reclassified up a year to join Alabama's class this year and caught 2 passes for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns. Certainly an impressive debut. He also was named a co-freshman of the week from the SEC alongside Nico Iamaleava. So Nick Sheridan saying, look, he's been very coachable, and the fact he's only 17 years old, he's only going to build from that. He said he loves football, loves to work, willing to be coached, think he's hungry to build off of that. We're excited to help him get better. So Ryan Williams, certainly a guy to keep an eye on there at Alabama, and What do you say after game? Jalen Milroe being number 4 plus his number 2 equals 6 points. Yeah. If you're an Alabama fan, you love it. If you're not, probably not a big fan of that. How about over in Florida, Billy Napier? He gave an update on his quarterback situation. Graham Mertz did not practice on Monday, still recovering from that concussion suffered in the loss to Miami on Saturday. And given his absence, Billy Napier said DJ Lagway going to take first team reps with the offense early this week. We will see, later this week. They have not ruled out Graham Mertz yet, but Billy Napier saying he's confident if DJ Lagway has to step in and start for the Gators this week. They play Samford, so this is one that, could certainly survive. But Lagway was a big 5-star recruit that everybody was excited about. I think the number 7 overall player in the country on the 24/7 composite. So, we'll see what happens. We'll also talk with Brandon Olson, our buddy, host of Locked On Gators, to get his thoughts on that quarterback situation. And Graham Mertz, why was he so awful in week 1? It was rough to watch. But DJ Lagway, if he gets a start this week, going to get a lot of Florida fans excited. You have to think at least a little bit. All right, over at Georgia, Kirby Smart revealing that big defensive stud Mykel Williams suffered a grade 2 ankle sprain in Georgia's win over Clemson on Saturday in Atlanta. And could have been worse. Smart said he's confident that the junior defensive lineman's injury is not a serious one. He was a second-team All-SEC selection last year. Kirby pinning him as week to week. So his availability obviously in question for this week against Tennessee Tech. He had 2 solo tackles in the game last week. And he had 4.5 sacks in each of the past 2 seasons. So Mykel Williams might be out for some time for Georgia. Certainly going to keep an eye on that one. Smart also gave an update on defensive back Jonel Aguero. Said he was close to going against Clemson. So he's hoping the sophomore can make his season debut this week against the Golden Eagles. Aguero had sustained a pull in practice a week before the game, Clemson game. And his injury changed the role for the Clemson game for safeties. Malachi Starks, Dan Jackson, KJ Bolden, Ja'Cory Thomas. Of course, KJ Bolden, everybody excited about, true freshman there at Georgia, and made his collegiate debut over the weekend. Kirby said he's played more football than most seniors. He's been playing since he was 6 years old in the heart of Atlanta, in one of the toughest leagues there is to play football. He's played up against older kids all his life, extremely athletic, and he said the moment was not too big for KJ. He's just very gifted athletically, so maybe we'll see a little bit more of KJ Bolden moving forward. One other note over at Tennessee, as Nico Iamaleava, again, we'll get to the post week 1 awards, but Dave Doran, North Carolina State's head coach, talking with the media on Monday about Nico Iamaleava, and said their quarterback, man, is he talented. He is fun to watch, and spoke glowingly about Nico. So good praise there from their opponent coming up this weekend. Over at Ole Miss, Jackson Dart and the Ole Miss Rebels obviously looked very good in their 76-0 win over Furman. And Dart played only the first half, but threw for over 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. Dart earned the highest quarterback grade of any quarterback in the country, according to Pro Football Focus. And it was a good day for SEC quarterbacks. 4 of the top 10 highest graded quarterbacks were from the SEC. Of course, his wide receiver, Trey Harris, 8 catches, 179 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He was fantastic. And Lane Kiffin and the Rebels, they will play Middle Tennessee State coming up this weekend, who, by the way, Middle Tennessee State, now coached by former Vanderbilt head coach Derek Mason, who gave high praise to Lane Kiffin, speaking with the media on Monday. He said Lane Kiffin is, quote, one of the most respected minds in college football. So high praise there for Lane Kiffin. Meanwhile, your SEC Players of the Week, SEC releasing their Players of the Week following week 1, and some great performances to reward. How about Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia, along with Georgia quarterback Carson Beck? Pavia led Vanderbilt to a huge upset over Virginia Tech in week 1, while Carson Beck led a dominant performance against Clemson in their win. Defensively, it was Alabama safety Keon Sabb earning Defensive Player of the Week honors against Western Kentucky. Had a couple tackles and 2 interceptions. Georgia's Peyton Woodring and Oklahoma's Tyler Keltner shared Special Teams Player of the Week honors. Woodring made all of his kicks against Clemson, including a career-high 55-yarder. And Keltner made his OU debut on Saturday, went 3 for 3 on field goals. His first kick of the game was a 50-yarder, followed up with a 42-yarder and a 24-yarder. Texas's Cameron Williams and Arkansas's Fernando Carmona, they were named co-offensive linemen of the week. South Carolina's Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart shared the league's award for defensive lineman of the week. And as for freshman of the week, it was a split from Alabama's Ryan Williams and Tennessee's Nico Iamaleava. So high praise there for those guys, and great stuff. One other note over at Georgia, it was obviously a low-scoring game. Jalen Walker on the defense finished the game with 6 tackles, 3 solo tackles, and 1.5 sacks. Reese's Senior Bowl named him their defensive player of the week. Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl putting that out there on social media, so high praise there. And one more note here before we call it an Around the Conference segment. Over at LSU, Brian Kelly obviously still reeling after LSU's close loss to USC on Sunday night out in Las Vegas. And Paul Feinbaum given his opinion on Brian Kelly on ESPN's Get Up Monday morning. He said that game was on Brian Kelly. He said, "Don't give me this. I need to do a better job coaching. You're paid $11 million to coach in that game and throughout it, not acting after the game." So giving some needed advice there to Brian Kelly from Paul Feinbaum over at the SEC network and ESPN. And Stuart Mandel of The Athletic putting out there last night that 9.2 million viewers tuned in for the LSU USC game on Sunday night. That is a lot. You know, Brian Fisher pointed this out on social media. He said, going to be more and more pressure from TV networks for such marquee games and more pushback from the coaches. Caught in the middle will be the athletic directors. And this is the tough part that some teams are stuck in, is like, you want to play these fun, non-conference games and get your fan base all excited to go out to Las Vegas or wherever and play some of these kind of games. But, also the other part of it is it's a potential loss. While you look around the conference and a lot of SEC teams play cupcakes this week and just, it was easy wins for them. So certainly something that will be interesting to watch as the year goes along. And by the way, any LSU fans that are calling for Brian Kelly's head already, at the end of this season, his buyout would be $56.7 million. So you might want to try to figure out how to get Brian Kelly some wins in week 1. But he's outside of the week 1 losses, he's done a pretty good job overall at LSU. But certainly you can understand why the fans there have been super frustrated. Over at Texas, Steve Sarkisian talking with the media yesterday. They got an 11 a.m. Central kickoff coming up this weekend at Michigan, a big one where College Game Day will be there. And he said to the media, I love playing 11 a.m. kickoffs because they are a morning operation. Said he doesn't know if it's an advantage, but he said it helps his program. So, look, we as SEC fans, we may not like the early games, but Steve Sarkisian, maybe it's in the Big 12 blood inside of him, but it's he likes the early starts in the 11 a.m. kickoff. So you can keep those, Sark. Not a fan. All right. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, our buddy Brandon Olson, Locked On Gators, is going to join us to talk all things Florida and what the heck is going on over there. That's coming your way here in just a second. Well, first, I want to remind you guys, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Ultimate College Football Head Coach. And it is an amazing, brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as we do. It is a game and a simulation where you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. You can take control of any team that you want, from Alabama, Texas, whoever it is, and from recruiting players, hiring your coaching staff, to overseeing training camps and handling school scholarships. You control every detail of your program. It's all in your hands. And here's what we really love. You're responsible for calling offensive plays during the games. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but will shape the future legacy of your program. It's Ultimate College Football HC. That's for head coach. Completely free. Has no ads. 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want, when you want to. And of course, we have a special offer for you from Locked On SEC. Use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's all caps. Inside the game store, once you get your coaching job set up, put in that code LOCKEDONCFB in the game store. Receive a free boost to your program, and make sure to take advantage of that perk, as it'll get your team off to a strong start. Download the game. Just visit ultimate-cfb.com, or you can look it up in the app stores. It is Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. Roll along here, Locked On SEC, and always fun when we could talk all things Florida Gators with our buddy Brandon Olson. And Brandon, I thought, no better time to have you on than, coming out of the weekend. We only had 3 SEC teams take losses over the weekend. 13-3, good weekend for the SEC overall, but the 3 losses. I mean, LSU was a heartbreaking late-minute loss to USC. Texas A&M, a dogfight of a battle against Notre Dame at College Station. Notre Dame pulls away late. And then the other team that lost, the Florida Gators, just got mollywopped by the Miami Hurricanes. Here we are, whatever it is, 48, 72 hours after. Take me through this game. Why was it so lopsided?
Well, I got a front row seat to it. Literally, I was sitting in the front row of that game. Cam McCormick, when he scored the first touchdown of the game, was right in front of me. So that was super fun. It was just a game where second year in a row, Florida does not come out fighting. You can look at Miami's first run play. They bullied Florida's defensive line immediately. They moved. It was like a 6-yard gain, but just the offensive line just blew Florida off the line. You look at Florida's offensive possessions, especially early, bad. It was a first down on the first play from scrimmage for Florida, and then 3 non-factors. They ended up punting there, 3 failed conversions. It was just ugly, bad. Graham Mertz played the worst game we've seen him play. I think maybe just from a pure what expectations were, I think that might have been the worst game of his college football career to this point. Got concussed, left the game. It was just ugly, bad football, bad program right now. Florida, I've said it, the Florida Gators coaching staff, and I said this on yesterday's episode of Locked On Gators, that last year when they lost to Utah, I came out here and I started berating Florida's coaching staff, and a bunch of them unfollowed me and a bunch of them blocked me. And since then, they have refollowed me and unblocked me. And I said yesterday, they might want to get to unfollowing and blocking me again, because if they're going to put forth performances like that, they're not going to have jobs long. And they should be absolutely ashamed of themselves that's what they put on the field. I know a lot of people spend a lot of money on this program, and I know a lot of people spent a lot of money to go to that game. Tickets weren't cheap. Flights, hotel, not cheap. And that's the performance you give them, as an absolute slap in the face to the Florida Gators fan base. And
Right.
This coaching staff should be embarrassed and ashamed of themselves for what they put on the performance, for what they put on the field in that week 1 performance 2 years in a row.
Well, we're going to get to Billy Napier here in just a minute, because he had some interesting comments on Monday. But a little bit more in this game. What did you make of Montrell Johnson kind of shouldering the load? Because that was a big question. Trevor Etienne hits the portal. He goes off to Georgia, and Montrell Johnson, can he be the featured back? I mean, 100 yards, but what? Really one big carry in there was most of those yards.
Yeah, 71-yard rushing touchdown for Montrell Johnson, which, by the way, was the biggest false hope I've ever been given. I was like, the offense is finally getting it going. I was honestly, I even after the depth chart came out and Montrell was at the top of it, I was skeptical he would touch the field at all. He's less than a month removed from a torn meniscus, is what we were told it is, getting his knee scope surgery. Less than a month removed, and he played a ton of the snaps out there. He played well. Offensive line played piss poor. That's why all the other carries for Montrell combined for 30 yards. Offensive line played pretty bad throughout. Just got bullied there. No other way to discuss it. No other way to describe it. That's what happened. Montrell, though, looked good for a guy that's less than a month removed from that. And I do think that Florida needs to do a better job of putting him in a good. That was the first time, and we were talking with I forgot what his name is, but the SEC StatCat guy. We were talking with him, or I was talking with him. That was the first time under Billy Napier that Florida had ever run pin pull, and it's a 71-yard touchdown, and then they didn't run it for the remainder of the game. And that is just another one of those mind-boggling decisions from this coaching staff on week 1. Rob Sale makes over $1 million this year. Jonathan DeCoster makes a few $100,000, and he's only been there for 9 months. Rob Sale's been there for 3 years, and that's the offensive line performance that you're putting out. should be embarrassed. He has me blocked on Twitter. He should probably try blocking someone on the field at some point.
Well, why is that? Because I mean, when you look at some of the names, and it's guys who've been there a while, or guys who had come over through the portal, and like Cameron Waits and Damian George and Jake Slaughter and Austin Barber. I mean, it looked like on paper, maybe not going to be one of the best O-lines in the SEC, but it looked like they'd be somewhat decent. Why are they not good?
Going from left to right, left tackle Austin Barber played a great game against Miami. I have no complaints about him. Fun part there, Mullen recruit. Left guard, Najee Harris, played well for a guy in his second career start. I don't think he played well overall. I think he played average, but the average isn't good, right? I think everybody can pretty much agree with that. Average is average. But again, good for a guy making his second career start, just average overall. Center Jake Slaughter, great game. Outside of the one bad snap, great game. Mullen recruit. Right guard Damian George, played right tackle last year, was horrible there. Played right guard this year, is going to be playing right guard this year. Played better, still bad. And Cam Waits did something I've never seen before, picking up a 0.0 pass blocking grade on PFF at right tackle. 4 pressures allowed. All of them came on 7 true pass sets. So no play action, no bootleg, no rollout, no blitzing, no dropping 8 into coverage and only rushing 3. So just a base passing play. 4 pressures allowed, 0.0 grade. And Cam Waits and Damian George should never touch a football field in a Florida Gators uniform again. That interception that Graham Mertz threw, and they didn't even attempt to make a tackle on the play when he was running to their side of the field. I don't know. If I'm a coach, you're never touching a football field for me again. And that's how I feel about Cam Waits and Damian George and their lackluster performance. Like, Cam Waits played horrible and gave no effort. He's someone that's been hyped for years, coming over from Louisiana. He's been hyped every year. And I've said, I don't know why. I don't think he's a very good football player. He proved me right on Saturday. And Damian George, again, played better at right guard than he played at right tackle. But that effort that you put, you should never touch a football field. And I promise you, NFL teams looked at that play and went, not drafting that football player. Not that they were going to draft him anyway, but I promise you that they saw him and were like, we're not even giving him a chance.
You mentioned Mertz, and he left the game with a concussion. We got to see a little bit of the big 5-star freshman DJ Lagway, kind of a two-parter. What'd you make of the limited sample size we saw of Lagway? And 2, with Mertz still with this concussion protocol, we'll see as the week goes along, but possibility, maybe Lagway gets his first career start against Samford this weekend. Timing probably right there. Good opponent to put his foot in the water and get him a taste of college football. But what'd you make of, you already told us how bad Mertz was, but what'd you make of Lagway, and what's the confidence level if he's got to start this week?
I think that Lagway played decently well, but it's hard to truly evaluate a quarterback coming in and playing in a blowout because defenses are playing softer coverage. It's a little bit easier for you. He did a good job of extending some plays with his legs. The interception he threw, I think he made the wrong read on it. It looked like an RPO, and I think he should have handed it off. He didn't. He got hit as he threw it, and it got picked. It just became a duck at that point. I think that a lot of his throws, though, again, take it with a grain of salt. It's, again, softer coverage. But I think his throws, crisp, clean, tight spiral. I mean, we know what he could do. There's a reason he was the top quarterback in the country in the 2024 class. Personally, if I'm Florida, I'm starting him no matter what Mertz's status is for Saturday. And I'm not saying it in the way of going, Graham Mertz shouldn't be the starter the rest of the year. I am saying that if you just got concussed, I'm not going to rush you back into this game against a team like Samford when we've got the SEC schedule coming up. I would just say, hey, we're going to give Lagway the start here. I do think that you open Pandora's box a bit there because if he goes off against Samford, then you've got to deal with, start Lagway the whole way. And that's a tough one to come back from. But I just think that regardless, I'm starting Lagway this week and just saying whatever happens, but I'm not rushing Graham Mertz back against a team like Samford. Yeah,
and that's what I was going to say. I mean, you're literally 2 weeks away from your first SEC game, and it's Texas A&M coming in, and their defense looked pretty stout, against in that loss to Notre Dame. Now, their offense had issues, but I mean, you look at that game coming up in 2 weeks. I mean, is that a game this Florida team, if they regroup and have a dominant win over Samford, is Is that a game that Florida can win in 2 weeks against A&M?
I think they can. I've said, I was never too sold on Texas A&M going into this year. Like you said, defense looked really good, but that offense was ugly. And that game in week 3 could be one of the ugliest games we're going to watch. If it's that Florida offense we saw against Miami and the Texas A&M offense we saw against Notre Dame, which granted, Notre Dame, good defense, but even just some of the defense irrelevant things, the offense just looked pretty rough for Texas A&M, in my opinion, at least. But I think that Florida can win this game. The general rule of thumb is that it's never as good as it looks in week 1, and it's never as bad as it looks in week 1. I mean, Florida in 2022 beat Utah, who ended up winning the Pac-12, and everybody was like, oh, maybe Florida can do it. Then they barely made a bowl game. They got smoked 30-3 in that bowl game. And last year, they looked horrendous in week 1 against Utah. And then they ended up having a bounce back there, ended again horribly. But I think that's never as good as it looks, never as bad as it looks. But there's a very large window for how good or bad this team can be this year. And it's obviously leaning more towards the bad side here. It's going to be ugly. I think that Texas A&M is still one of those winnable games, especially early in the season. But Florida just needs to be better throughout in every single phase of the game.
All right, more with Brandon Olson here in just a second. But I want to remind you, today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot to stay alert, to watch all your favorite games, or if you stayed up late to see that intense overtime game, take a 5 Hour Energy shot in the morning so you can start your day with zero sugar and a convenient portable size. It is the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5 Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, whatever it is, as a flavor for everyone. Try them all. And on the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it's delivered right to your door. Just go to 5hourenergy.com. That is the number 5, hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today. You can use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's going to get you 20% off your order. That offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Get set up and start getting that extra boost you need throughout the day. Yeah, I'm looking. I mean, look, you don't want to overreact to what we saw in week 1, but I mean, Mississippi State now looks like they could be, they're not going to be a pushover. Tennessee looks strong. Kentucky looked pretty good. Georgia's Georgia. Texas is strong. LSU, maybe the defense isn't all the way fixed, so maybe there's hope there. But Ole Miss and then Florida State, I mean, look, the schedule's still absolutely brutal, and we'll see what the Gators do here in a couple weeks. All right, before we let you go, Brandon, we got to get reaction. Yesterday, Billy Napier taking a shot at one of the media members and getting ripped for it on social media. Everybody's saying this is not what you want to be doing if you're Billy Napier. Here was how it sounded.
We got to go to work on the football part, and I think we got to get more. We got to become a more consistent team, and we have to execute better. And if we can focus on those things and not necessarily what some guy in his basement saying in, rural Central Florida on social media, then we got a chance to get better.
So Billy Napier taking a shot at one of the reporters there, and obviously, look, it's the old joke, like we're not listening to people on message boards in their mom's basement and all that kind of stuff. But dude, it's you're coming out of week 1, and you're already taking shots. I mean, I hate to say it, but everybody on social media is saying this is the early sign of dead man walking.
Oh, but I think it's toward the end of the sign. I think the moment you do that, I'm like, oh, done. Just call it. Might as well just sign the check now over there. I will say that, yeah, I believe that this was intended toward a specific media member that he was looking at the time. There's a quote going on Twitter that doesn't have the video attached where it's saying that he's saying that to fans, like where he says, we're not listening to fans saying things in Central Florida. That's obviously not what he's saying. But it's like I've said before, and I will say again, it's the Dan Mullen recruiting answer. It's just that the Dan Mullen, we'll talk about recruiting season when it's recruiting season. What Dan Mullen really meant was, in my opinion, we'll talk about recruiting season when we're not in football season. Billy Napier was talking, I believe, about a specific individual when talking about or when answering that question. But Can't say dumb things like that. One, after a performance like your team put out on Saturday, and two, when you're on the hot seat, which he very much was. He's always been on the hot seat. That's always been something that we've acknowledged here. Just can't do that. Can't say stupid things, do stupid things, and then look stupid on the field as well. You're not going to last long. And yeah, I think most of us are realizing probably not going to be Billy Napier versus Mario Cristobal in 2025.
All right, so in that realm, we love nothing more than a good coaching search conversation after week 1 of a college football season. Give me a name or two on your wish list. If they called you and said, Brandon, we want to help you make this next coaching hire, again, if Billy Napier is fired, but like who would be on your short list?
Dan Lanning would be number 1 on my list. I've been a huge fan of Dan Lanning for years. He'd be right up there. I know he's not leaving Oregon, but this is my list.
Right.
And so in my list, I'm giving him a blank check. I've been hypercritical of Lane Kiffin, but at a certain point, I want to win some football games too. I would like to win some football games too. And one thing I will say that I've really respected about Lane Kiffin's approach at Ole Miss is the way he will just blatantly call boosters out or make a comment about, this is what I need NIL wise. This is how much this program is spending on NIL, that kind of stuff. I like it. And look, Miami fans have been tweeting at me since that game because I talked just obscene amounts of trash, which I promise you, Miami fans, I will be talking obscene amounts of trash next year. I don't care who's the head coach there. But I kind of like Lane's talking trash, where he's just like the Twitter finger stuff. I know a lot of people will hate. But if Lane seems more serious, which he does, when he hired Pete Golding as defensive coordinator, he seemed a bit more serious. I'd be interested to see that at least open the door for that conversation. But again, Lane is someone that I've disliked for a while. But if you're going to win me football games at this point, man, I don't care. Just win me some damn football games.
Yeah, one word of advice, Lane. Stop stepping on sponsors' toes. No more shots at Coca-Cola, all right? If you're going to be at a big-time program. And look, it's funny. It's how everybody was a few years ago. Lane Kiffin was toxic, but I've talked to so many different fan bases that are saying, you know what? I mean, if we get Lane, I'll take him. I mean, we want to win football games, and he's been doing that at a high rate at Ole Miss these last couple of seasons. Last thing I'll throw at you, Brandon, I watched Pat McAfee on College Game Day. He's obnoxious. He's out there. He's ripping his shirt off. Let's see. Does old Nick want to get back in the game? After sitting a whole season on the game day set next to McAfee, maybe old Nick wants to get back into it. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
The Saban to the Swamp tweets were going up at halftime of the game against Miami. I don't know where they're coming from with that. Personally, I'm not saying I need a young coach. I am saying that I don't necessarily want a coach that's coming out of retirement in any way, shape, or form. I know Florida fans are going to say Urban Meyer because, the glory days and all that. One thing about that, Urban did not leave on the best of terms and did not leave. The program wasn't in the best of shape when he ducked out. But yeah, it's just, I'd rather not have a coach where I'm going every offseason. Is this going to be the year where he retires? Is he done? Is he this? I'd rather have a coach where I at least generally know, unless, they're here for 25 years and then I'm worrying about that question, then yeah, sure, absolutely. But I'd rather not every year go through the, is he finally done conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's great stuff. And Brandon, I got a feeling we'll be talking with you a lot throughout this season on Locked On SEC. Plenty of drama down there in the swamp as this SEC season rolls on. He is Brandon Olson, host of Locked On Gators. Brandon, always appreciate the time, man.
Thank you, Gordy.
All right, that's Brandon Olson there. And we appreciate you guys for joining us here on Locked On SEC and, of course, making us your first listen every day. Now you can go make your second listen. Check out Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. Or, hey, go check out Brandon. He's got Locked On Gators doing his thing over there, and make him your second listen. And, of course, always appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow talking all things Southeastern Conference football right here on Locked On SEC. I'm Chris Gordy. You guys have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.